Him is not just the worst movie I've seen this year, it's arguably the worst movie I've ever reviewed on this channel. Yes, Amelia Perez was a dumpster fire of evil, elitist moral propaganda. Madam Web had a plot hole or contradiction in almost every scene, Snow White was a headache-inducing abomination, and the 6888's existence was an insult to everyone who actually fought in World War II. But him is worse than all of those. The only movie giving it a run for its money is Joker Folia de. Him has no idea what it's supposed to be. The lead actor is stiff as plank, except Plank was funny, and it's not even structured at all. I was going to say it's not structured correctly, but it barely has a structure at all. It's basically one act for 85 of its 96-minute runtime before it skips to what I guess it would call the third act. You know what? Let's go through it, the whole thing, so I can rip it apart scene by scene. It starts with young Cameron Cade watching Isaiah White lead the San Antonio Saviors to the USFF Championship, because not even Roger Goodell likes money enough to allow the NFL to be associated with this abortion. And in the midst of the game, Isaiah breaks his leg in brutal fashion, with his bone going through the skin. Cameron's dad forces him to watch as the camera shows close-ups of the gruesome injury, telling him, "No guts, no glory," as his crucifix dangles next to Cameron's face. So first of all, right off the bat, this is absurd. TV broadcasts do not replay gruesome injuries, and they certainly don't leave them on the screen for an extended time. I remember when Kevin Ware snapped his tibia in half and it broke out of the skin, like Isaiah White during March Madness in, 2014, I think. They didn't put the camera anywhere near the court. Even when Nick Chubb injured his knee against the Steelers in 2023, they wouldn't show a replay of it. Oh yeah, it might be worthwhile for me to mention that I actually played football in college, so I know a lot about this film's subject and a decent bit about what I think it's trying to go for. But right off the bat, you're left scratching your head as to why things happen this way, and that keeps happening throughout the movie where you know that's not the way things work, but they had to make it that way for the garbage story to still suck. So fast forward, and Cameron Cade has had an incredible college football career and is slated to go #1 overall in this year's NFL or USFF whatever draft. He's like the USFF equivalent to Caleb Williams, except 20 times better. I mean, not even Skip Bayless thought Caleb Williams was going to turn out to be better than Tom Brady.
One day, I am predicting, Johnny Manziel will become even bigger in the city of Cleveland than his buddy and business partner LeBron James ever was in the city of Cleveland. One day, the passing connection of Johnny Manziel to Josh Gordon will...
But everyone is certain that Cameron Cade is going to be even better than Isaiah White, who just won his 8th Super Bowl, or whatever they call it, with the Saviors. I'm just going to call it Super Bowls in the NFL because that's what it's supposed to be. Obviously, the number 8 is significant because it's one more than Tom Brady won. Now, I don't know why Justin Tipping felt the need to one-up Tom Brady. I think it would have been better to stick with 7, so we could imagine this is how Tom Brady would have had to train, but whatever. What's incredibly stupid about this isn't that Isaiah White has won 8 Super Bowls with the Saviors, but that somehow the Saviors have the first overall pick in the draft to select Cameron Cade with. How do you win the Super Bowl and have the first overall pick? That's not how that works. You would have the last pick of the draft. Now, it is technically possible the Saviors could have traded up for it, but if Cameron Cade is as good as everyone is claiming he is, then no team would trade back to let the team that has had an iron grip on the league for over a decade get him. And I guess it could have been a Houston Texans, Cleveland Browns, Deshaun Watson situation where the Saviors had traded away someone for a bunch of future first-round picks and that team ended up sucking. But again, the only position that would fetch that kind of price is quarterback. And the Saviors obviously didn't trade away the greatest quarterback of all time. Again, this just isn't the way things work. And in a movie that's only an hour and a half long, where you already have sports analyst voiceovers, why don't you just dedicate 10 seconds to explaining how this impossible scenario has arisen? Because these filmmakers suck at making films. That's why. Now, before Cam goes to the Combine, and if you're not an NFL fan, the Combine is a week-long event where teams get to evaluate players in the draft with all sorts of physical and mental tests and interviews. And before Cam goes there, he spends some time working out at his old high school field. But while he's there, I think, demon mascot, I don't know, appears out of nowhere behind him with a sledgehammer and bashes his skull in. And it turns out this is in no way metaphorical. He literally gets a severe head injury from it that leaves him with a scar. Okay. So demons are in this movie. And with the imagery of his dad's crucifix and the team being called the Saviors, I guess this is going to be a spiritual story. A cost of greatness story where it is literally supernatural and Cameron is going to have to sell his soul to be the GOAT. A storyline that would be much more appropriate in a movie about someone in show business or the music industry, but whatever, that's what it's going to be. Except, spoiler alert, it's not about that at all. At least not in substance, but we'll get there. So, because of this head injury, Cam can't participate in the combine. And the result of this, somehow, is that he's no longer going to get drafted at all, and his football career is over. Once again, that's not how this works. You don't have to participate in the combine to be eligible for the draft. This kid would absolutely still get picked first overall. Remember when I said Cameron Cade is this movie's version of Caleb Williams? Well, guess what? Caleb Williams, who was the undisputed first overall pick that the Chicago Bears had traded with the Carolina Panthers a year earlier to get, didn't participate in the NFL Combine either. So why is there now no way for Cameron Cade to go pro?
That doesn't make any f***ing sense!
He's at a party wallowing, and when his agent calls him to tell him he's been invited to train with Isaiah White, it's portrayed as the only chance Cam has of making the NFL, which just isn't true. Well, then Cam ends up going to Isaiah White's desert compound to train with him. As he's pulling in, some Mad Max-looking fools are camped outside, and they're basically cultists who follow Isaiah. Again, spiritual stuff. And don't worry, if you don't trust my analysis, another character straight up says his fan base is like a cult. When Cam enters the creepy compound, Isaiah makes him give up his phone. Again, why? He says it's to get rid of distractions and whatnot, but that's not the reason. The reason is because if Cam had his phone, he would probably tell his mom and or girlfriend about some of the stuff that goes on here. They'd call the cops and the movie would be over. The truth is, and again, played college football, went to training camp, you don't have to give up your phone because you straight up just don't have time to be on your phone for 15 hours of the day. So Cam spends 6 days training with Isaiah, and it's just a bunch of weird stuff. Isaiah stores up his own blood to give himself some blood transfusions. Jim Jeffries is constantly injecting shots of what I think was Isaiah's blood into Cam, but the focal points are the disturbing training methods Isaiah puts Cam through. He launches balls at a wide receiver's face if Cam doesn't make accurate throws in under 2 seconds, which is basically what it's like to watch this movie. He puts Cam in a linebacker helmet and visor to restrict his visibility, then sends defenders at him. He has to either evade or stand up, and other grueling physical labors highlighted sometimes by showing the x-ray of those involved as their bodies are destroyed. Now, why are these guys signing up for this and not surprised at all that this is what's happening? I don't know. What is this, like an open secret around the league that this is how Isaiah trains and nobody's stopped him? I don't know. But the message, I think, is clear. Justin Tipping doesn't like football. He thinks it's really brutal. Okay, I saw Concussion 2, and I played it. I know it's a dangerous sport. What would be a little more interesting is to explore why Isaiah does all of this. Is it for glory, as would maybe make sense with the multiple comparisons of football players to ancient Roman gladiators? Is it a drive to be the greatest, or is it just a love for the game? We don't know, but the film seems to be about how far football players have to go and how much they have to sacrifice to be great. Isaiah is the best because he's the only one who's crazy enough to be the best. Basically like Whiplash, except about football, and bad, and with elements of horror that aren't scary. Oh, and a couple sequences that genuinely merited an epilepsy warning before the movie. Seriously, I'm not bothered or triggered or whatever the correct terminology is by flashing or strobing, but it was actually downright irresponsible to not have some sort of warning for those people who are. So now that the movie has basically abandoned the whole spiritual element of what it takes to be great and decided to be about the physical and mental sacrifices required to play football at the elite level, it decides to throw some more nonsense at you before completely switching courses yet again. What kind of nonsense? Nothing much, just some of the cultists from outside the compound attacking Cam while he's in the sauna. And to be clear, I don't mean they break the sauna door or something to get to him. I mean a Mad Max chick literally comes out from under the sauna bench and tries to kill him. And then there are some strippers, and Isaiah encourages Cam to cheat on his girlfriend with Isaiah's wife. Okay. But then what I guess might count as like a 5-minute second act starts. Cam goes to a party to meet with the owners of the San Antonio Saviors, and it turns out Isaiah isn't unique. All these people are freaks. They have a bunch of weird rituals and strippers. Dr. Jim Jeffries silently tells Cam to run, and so he ends up getting beheaded, and it's like perfectly normal. So apparently the whole team, including the ownership, is as twisted as Isaiah. And if this team is, are we then left to believe that all the other teams in the league are? If that's the case, then why is Isaiah even special? This movie has been building up why Isaiah is so different, why he's better than everyone else, but his twistedness is not unique to himself, so how did he end up better than every other quarterback? Well, before I do my best to explain the ridiculous path the movie goes down next, let's recap how this movie has progressed thus far. It starts off about spiritual sacrifice, then it changes course to the physical and mental cost of greatness. Now that has been dropped, and it hasn't been picked up by anything yet, until Cam wakes up in the midst of receiving a transfusion of Isaiah's blood that we saw him storing up earlier. He finds Isaiah elsewhere in the compound, who fills him in on what's going on. Apparently, 2 generations of quarterbacks before Isaiah, there was a legend who was the greatest to ever play the game. The owners took that guy's blood and put it into the next quarterback, and he became the new greatest of all time. And when his time was up, they transfused his blood into Isaiah. So the real reason Isaiah is so great is not because of the way he was born or his own drive, but rather because he has an old quarterback's special blood in him. And try as I might, I have no idea what kind of allegory this is going for. And that's before we get to Cam and Isaiah fighting to the death. Seriously, I even looked up explanations for the ending, and nobody can provide a reasonable interpretation except that the movie just sucks and Justin Tipping should never be allowed to make a movie again. Being as gracious as possible and doing the writer's work for them, it might be some commentary on how NFL owners use their players as commodities, but that really doesn't offer an explanation for the whole transferring of blood, and the fact that Cam has to kill Isaiah. Now, apparently this has to happen because there can only be one him. And Isaiah still has 1 year left on his contract, so they have to fight. A couple key questions. First, why can there only be one him? Can't they just have 2 hymns? Second, why doesn't the team just cut Isaiah now that they have their new hymn? Third, did this have to happen between the first hymn and the second hymn, and between the second hymn and Isaiah? Because I really think that should have come up, that Isaiah's predecessor mysteriously died at the end of his career, and that guy's predecessor also mysteriously died at the end of his career. And fourth and finally, if the owners are so predatory and they're ensuring that they have the next hymn, why does Isaiah even have a chance to survive? They should make sure Isaiah dies so Cam can take his place. Basically like Palpatine with Dooku and Anakin. After Cam kills Isaiah, he goes outside where the owners, his agent, and Isaiah's wife are waiting for him to sign a contract to play for the Saviors. And they're all in ridiculous masks, including one with a pig mask. Then they explain to Cam that they've groomed him for this. Cam was pushed hard into football by his dad. At one point, he quit football, but then his dad died and he went back to it. Not to honor his dad or anything, but because it didn't feel real when he was on the field. Now, I know I have the emotional intelligence of a football player and an engineer, but that doesn't make a lick of sense to me. Not as much as this next part, though. Apparently, the owners killed his dad after he entered a demonic deal to make his son a great football player. They somehow knew Cam would respond to that by becoming an amazing quarterback. That's an insane leap there, but it is kind of driving the theme home that these owners see Cam as nothing more than a commodity. But why do they tell him this? In maybe the only logical moment of the entire movie, upon finding out that these clowns killed his dad, Cam decides he actually doesn't want to play for them. Imagine that! Which is quite the flaw in these rich dudes' cabal setup. What if one of your hymns decides to just not go along with your ridiculous cult? You didn't really spend the movie showing why they would. But anyway, as they give Cam one last chance to decide to play for them, I think the team mascot sneaks up behind him holding another sledgehammer and takes a swing at him when he says no. Just like the demon figure who bonked him on the noggin at the beginning. Something that it turns out was also planned by the owners. Now, before I get into the last crazy route the film goes, yes, it actually switches what it's about with less than 5 minutes left, I have to talk about how all-fired stupid that is. So the owners sent this thing to crack Cam's skull. Why? Here's what I can gather was the plan. It doesn't make sense, but it's the only explanation I can think of. They sent the demon? I don't know. He sure looked like a normal guy dressed up in a stupid costume, and there's no other supernatural stuff in the movie until the very end, but who did appear out of nowhere to bash Cam's skull with a sledgehammer. Not enough to kill him, but enough that he can't perform in the combine. For some reason, because he can't perform in the combine, he won't get drafted. Again, we've already discussed how that's not how that works, but okay. And because he won't get drafted since he wasn't in the combine, he'll be desperate enough to go train with the greatest quarterback to ever play so they can inject him with the him blood and make him their new star. Do you see how ridiculous that is? I'll simplify it. They nearly kill their golden goose so he'll go train with his hero. I know all of my viewers see the ridiculous nature of this plan, but in case any of the writers of this movie are watching, I'll spell it out for them. Why would a young quarterback who is driven to be great need to be put in a manufactured, desperate situation to train with his idol? Do you seriously think there's a single quarterback coming out of college, entering the real-life draft, who would say no to training with Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes? Obviously not. And it's not as though he tries to leave, but it's made clear he'll never play in the league if he does. The Saviors are the only team who will sign him. Once more, that's ridiculous and not how getting hurt before the combine works. Right, JJ McCarthy? So why did they set this story up this way? Again, I have your answer, because Justin Tipping has the writing capabilities of an orangutan that sniffed too much glue in first grade. Now, before I wrap up the final couple minutes of the movie, let's take another look at the progression we're working with. It starts off about spiritual sacrifice, then switches over to the physical and mental cost of greatness. Then confusion as the owners of the team are brought in and everyone, it turns out, is being stupid. Then stalls while Cam and Isaiah fight each other. Then back to a bit of spiritual/supernatural sacrifice and how NFL owners treat their players as commodities rather than human beings. And here at the end, it turns into just a horror parody as Cam picks up a sword, because he has a sword, and kills the mascot. Then people start dying in the most comedic ways possible. Isaiah's wife trips and falls while holding a knife that stabs herself in the neck. Then Cam throws the sword about 20 yards into the pig mask guy's back. Then he decapitates the owner against the field goal post, and the agent gets dragged into the middle of an altar, I guess, and tortured because I guess some sacrifice is required or something. And that's it. The movie's over. Horrible. Whatever this movie tried to do, it failed. But even what I think it tried to do was stupid to begin with. Before we talk about the wonderful themes, I'll mention the performances that need to be noted. Tyreek Withers plays Cam. What, you haven't heard of him before? From his one episode of Atlanta? Well, if this movie is indication, there's a reason he hasn't been cast in much. He's not a very good actor. He looks the part, like a quarterback coming out of college that is toned but not strong enough to be truly ready for the league, but his acting and delivery is often muted. He doesn't get scared or freaked out like he really should. In a horrible movie like this, entertainment can still be found if there are great performances and you get to watch true acting showcased. Like in Venom with Tom Hardy, or Capone with Tom Hardy, or Legend with Tom Hardy. Man, he needs to get cast in better stuff. But there aren't any performances like that. Before I went and saw it, I had heard that Marlon Wayans killed it. Now, maybe it's because the role he was playing was so ridiculous, but no, he didn't. He wasn't bad, he did fine, but it isn't a breakout performance or anything. It's probably the highlight of this horrible movie, but that's like being the smartest person in the special needs class, or the best looking guy in the burn unit. It doesn't mean much. And before I get to the themes, I just have to mention, the constant use of the word him in this movie, I'm him, it's just immature. It just is stupid. It's just childish. Make an adult movie and make people talk like adults. So the themes. There's one main theme to talk about and another that's mentioned that deserves to be debunked. The main one is supposedly that white owners in the NFL treat young black men as commodities to break down for their own financial gain, then discard them when they're no longer useful. Now, first of all, it's not as though the entire NFL is black. It's not the NBA, which is supposedly over 80% black. The NFL is more like just over half, with some surveys saying 53.3% and others saying around 70%. I'm not sure why there's such a discrepancy, but I'll choose the one that seems more precise. So what about the other 46.7%? Are those whiteys and Latinos treated super well? Do they not get CTE and have an average career length of just over 3 years? I mean, there's always kickers who can play for 20 years with no severe bodily harm, but it's not white people's fault black people don't want to be kickers. I'm sure it is somehow, but I'm not willing to bash my head in with a sledgehammer to make myself stupid enough to figure out how. So what does Justin Tipping want? For there only to be white players in the league? I'm sure he doesn't, or he would make a movie about how there are no black people in the NFL. Maybe his problem is that there aren't any black owners in the NFL. Does he think that would change anything? Does he think that if Magic Johnson, who is currently a part owner of the Washington Commanders, became a majority owner, Jaden Daniels would magically never get hurt? Or if he did, Washington would continue to pay him for the next 15 seasons to not even play? No. This isn't a race thing. That's ridiculous. The NFL used to be majority white, and when it was, players had a much harsher deal than they do now. They got paid less, and it was less safe. But as black people have become more and more represented in the NFL, playing in the league has become more lucrative and safer. And that, again, has absolutely nothing to do with race. It's become more lucrative because football has become bigger, in large part thanks to Roger Goodell being a really good commissioner, as much as we all hate him. And it's become safer because technology has become better, and Will Smith told us it's actually bad to bash your heads together 70 times a game. The other stupid theme comes from a line that Isaiah says. As a black quarterback, I had to be great to be good. Shut up. This isn't a thing. It's been a really long time since it was strange to see a black quarterback in the NFL. Just this past weekend, my uncle showed me a bunch of old letters I had written to him, one of which was a thank you note for a Steve McNair jersey he had given me. And that was when I was like 5. Does Justin Tipping think the only black quarterbacks who are allowed to be in the NFL are Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson? Does he seriously think there are no average or even below average black quarterbacks who start in the NFL? Does he not know that Kyler Murray and Dak Prescott both received record-breaking contracts the last time they signed extensions? Does he not know Bryce Young is still starting? Or Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, Spencer Rattler? Heck, Geno Smith is still starting in the NFL. So him? Worst movie of 2025 by far, and one of the worst movies I've seen in legitimately years. An absolute mess of a film that has no idea what it's supposed to be, with victimhood themes that are antithetical to what football is really about.
All right, the sauce.
What?
The sauce. I don't know. You're using too much sauce, okay? Review's over.